Shadows Reborn, crafting film noir with modern light. Chapter 1. The World in Shadow. It begins, as these things often do, with rain. Not a storm, not violence, just a quiet, persistent fall, each drop catching what little light the world is willing to give. A narrow alley stretches into darkness. Brick walls, worn smooth by decades of weather and neglect, lean inward as though conspiring. Somewhere in the distance, a flicker, a street lamp hums, fails, returns, and beneath it a figure. You don't see his face. Not yet, only the outline. The suggestion of a man shaped by shadow more than light. A hat brim cuts across where his eyes should be. A faint curl of smoke rises, then disappears into the black above him. For a moment, he is nothing more than contrast, light interrupted. This is where noir lives. Not in the clarity of what we see, but in the uncertainty of what we don't. There was a time when cinema did not try to reveal everything. In the 1940s and 50s, filmmakers worked with limitation. Film stocks that struggled in low light, lenses that softened the world, and lighting instruments that demanded precision. They did not flood a scene with illumination. They carved it carefully, deliberately, allowing darkness to do as much storytelling as light. What emerged from that constraint was not just a style, but a language of shadow. Faces split between truth and secrecy. Rooms divided into sharp geometry. Light that felt less like illumination and more like interrogation. This visual philosophy came to be known as film noir. But today, we live in a different world. Modern digital cameras see everything. They capture detail in the darkest corners. They smooth imperfections. They render skin, texture, and space with a precision that borders on clinical. Nothing is left to guesswork. Nothing is left to mystery. And in doing so, something is lost. Because mystery, true mystery, requires absence. It requires restraint. It requires the courage to leave part of the frame in darkness. This is the paradox we face. We now have the most powerful image-making tools in history. And yet, to create something timeless, we must learn how to hold them back. To take a camera that sees too much and teach it to see less. In this film, we are not simply recreating the past. We are translating it, using modern tools, LED panels, digital sensors, precision modifiers. We will build something that feels older than the technology itself. Something textured, imperfect, alive with tension. We will transform ordinary spaces into worlds of suspicion and silence. We will shape light until it feels dangerous. And we will follow, just for a while, a man who belongs in that world. The figure beneath the street lamp shifts. A small movement. Almost nothing. But the light catches him differently now, just enough to reveal the edge of a cheekbone, the line of a jaw, the faintest glint where I might be watching. This is Detective Inspector Alistair Finch, a man who understands something most do not, that what hides in shadow is often more important than what stands in the light. Before we begin building this world, before we place a single light or shape a single shadow, we must first understand what makes noir. Noir. Not the equipment, not the era, but the feeling. Because without that, all we are left with is darkness without meaning. So we start here. In the quiet, in the rain, in the space between what is seen and what is suggested. Because in noir, the shadows are not empty. They are waiting. Movie Camera Shot List, Chapter 1. This chapter is about mood, tone, and immersion, not instruction. Shots should be slow, deliberate, and minimal. Opening sequence. Wide shot. Rain falling in dark alley, locked off or slow push in. Close up. Water hitting pavement, rippling reflections. Insert, flickering street lamp. Character introduction, Finch, medium silhouette. Finch under light, face obscured. Close up, cigarette ember glowing in darkness. Profile shadow shot, hat brim cutting across face. Atmospheric inserts, dripping pipes. Light reflecting off wet brick. Smoke drifting through frame. Footstep in shallow puddle. Camera movement style, slow dolly or slider moves. Occasional static shots for tension. No handheld, Keep it controlled and deliberate. Shadows Reborn. Crafting film noir with modern light. Chapter 4. Patterns, shadows, and the language of noir. Studio microphone narration script. A room is never just a room in noir. It is a structure of light, a map of intention, a place where every shadow falls exactly where it must and nowhere else. In the early days of cinema, filmmakers did not have the tools we have now. They had fewer lights, less control, more limitation. And yet, what they created feels more deliberate than much of what we see today. Because they understood something essential. Light, when shape becomes design. One of the most enduring images in noir is deceptively simple. A beam of light, interrupted, broken into lines, cast across a wall, or a face like a quiet form of confinement. This is the Venetian blind effect. And it is not just visual style. It is metaphor. Bars of light stretch across the frame. They divide the subject. They suggest entrapment, surveillance, the feeling of being watched or perhaps being judged, all created with nothing more than shadow. To achieve this, we introduce a new tool, the gobo, a simple obstruction placed between the light and the subject, designed to shape the beam into something intentional. In this case, into lines. Hard light passes through the gaps, and what remains is structure, geometry, meaning. But the key is not just the pattern. It is the quality of the light itself. Soft light, diffused and forgiving, will blur the edges. It will soften the lines until they lose their authority. Noir demands the opposite. Hard light, focused, unyielding, precise. The edges must feel sharp enough to cut. As the pattern falls across the scene, something shifts. The environment begins to speak. A wall is no longer empty, it is divided. A face is no longer whole, it is fractured. And the space itself begins to feel controlled. We take this further. We remove the key light from the front entirely and place it behind the subject. Now, the figure becomes a silhouette, a shape without detail, a presence without identity. Silhouette is one of the most powerful tools in noir because it denies the viewer what they instinctively seek, the face. And in that denial, it creates tension. Who is this? What are they thinking? What are they hiding? A second light appears, subtle, controlled, placed behind and to the side. It traces the edge of the figure, shoulder, hat brim, the line of a coat. This is rim lighting, and its purpose is not to reveal, but to separate. Without it, the subject dissolves into darkness. With it, they emerge, just enough to exist, not enough to be understood. Now, we begin to combine these elements. Pattern, silhouette, rim. The scene becomes layered. Foreground shadows cross mid-ground figures. Background light hints at unseen space. The subject moves, not freely, but through zones of illumination. Each step reveals and conceals. This is where blocking becomes essential. In noir, movement is not casual. It is choreographed. A step forward brings a face into light, truth perhaps. A step back returns it to shadow, doubt, or deception. The actor does not just perform. They interact with light. Even practical sources, lamps, windows, signs, take on new meaning. They are not decoration. They are motivation. They answer the silent question, why is the light here? A desk lamp becomes an interrogation tool. A window becomes a barrier. A flickering sign becomes instability itself. And through it all, the camera watches. Still, patient, sometimes moving slowly, almost imperceptibly. A push inward, a tightening of the frame, as though the world itself is closing in. The figure pauses, half within the pattern, half outside it, caught between structure and shadow. This is noir at its most expressive, not just lighting a subject, but shaping a world, because in the end, the light does not simply reveal where a character stands. It reveals what they are trapped within. Shot list, Chapter 4. This chapter is visual, graphic, and highly stylized. Focus on patterns, shapes, and movement through light. 1. Venetian blind effect. Light turning on pattern appears on wall. Close-up, sharp lines across surface. Medium shot, pattern crossing Finch's face. 2. Gobo demonstration. Insert. Placing gobo in front of light. Before/after. Plain light pattern light. Adjusting distance, changing line sharpness. 3. Hard versus soft light comparison. Hard light, crisp shadow lines. Soft light, blurred, ineffective pattern. Side-by-side comparison. 4. Silhouette introduction. Front light off subject falls into darkness. Backlight on silhouette appears. Wide shot. Finch fully silhouetted. 5. Rim lighting. Close-up. Rim outlining hat and shoulders. Gradual intensity increase, subtle defined. 6. Combined scene. Pattern plus silhouette plus rim, all active. Finch walking through bands of light. Shadow lines moving across his face as he steps. 7. Blocking demonstration. Finch steps into light, face revealed. Steps back, disappears. Pauses half-lit in pattern. 8. Practical lights. Desk lamp turning on. Light from window casting pattern. Neon flicker effect in background. Lighting breakdown. 1. Key light with gobo. Hard LED. Gobo placed directly in front, Venetian blind pattern. Positioned at angle to project across subject and background. Effect. Creates iconic noir line patterns. Adds structure and symbolism. 2. Silhouette setup. No front fill light. Subject primarily lit from behind or side. Effect. Removes facial detail. Emphasizes shape and mystery. 3. Rim light. Positioned behind subject. Slight angle to catch edges, hat, shoulders. Effect. Separates subject from background. Adds dimensionality without revealing identity. 4. Flags, light control. Prevents spill from key and rim lights, maintain deep blacks. 5. Background. Selectively lit or partially patterned. Avoid full illumination. Camera strategy. Frame for composition, lines, geometry. Keep movements slow and intentional. Watch for highlight clipping on bright pattern lines. Key principle of this chapter. Light is no longer just shaping a subject, it is shaping the world they inhabit. Clapperboard end of Chapter 4. Now we move into the chapter where everything stops feeling like a set and starts feeling like a world. Up to this point, we've shaped light, controlled shadow, built patterns. But noir is not only about contrast. It is about atmosphere, the sense that the air itself carries tension. Clapperboard shadows reborn, crafting film noir with modern light. Chapter 5, texture, atmosphere, and a living frame. Studio microphone narration script. There is a moment when a scene begins to breathe. Not because anything has changed dramatically, but because something subtle has been introduced. A softness in the air, a shimmer on the ground, a suggestion that the world extends beyond what we can see. In noir, atmosphere is not decoration. It is presence. It is what turns a constructed image into something that feels lived in, weathered, real. We begin with water. A simple act. A fine mist sprayed across pavement, brick, metal, surfaces that, moments ago, absorbed light without response. Now they reflect. The ground becomes a mirror, not perfect but broken, distorted, alive with movement. Light no longer stops at the surface. It stretches. It echoes. It returns. A single beam of light hits the wet ground, and suddenly, the frame expands. What was once contained now feels doubled. The world above and the world below. This is one of the simplest transformations in noir, and one of the most powerful, because reflection adds depth without adding complexity. Then we turn to the air itself. A haze, introduced gently, almost invisibly, begins to settle into the scene. At first, it seems like nothing, but then the light cuts through it, and suddenly we can see the path it takes. Beams emerge, soft at the edges, defined at the core. They move through space rather than simply landing on it. Foreground separates from background. Distance becomes visible. The scene gains layers. This is atmosphere at work. Not overwhelming, not theatrical, but just enough to give light something to exist within. Too much, and the illusion breaks. Too little, and the image remains flat. The balance is delicate and essential. Now we consider texture, not as detail, but as interaction. Brick walls catch light differently than smooth metal. Fabric absorbs what concrete reflects. Smoke drifts where structure remains still. Each surface responds in its own way, and together they create variation. Modern cameras capture all of this with remarkable precision. But that precision must be guided, because left alone, it will reveal everything equally. And noir is never equal. So we begin to shape not just light, but how the camera interprets it. Dynamic range becomes a tool, not for preserving every detail, but for choosing which details survive. Highlights are protected, allowed to glow, but not overwhelm. Shadows are encouraged to deepen, to hold their silence. And then we introduce imperfection. A subtle diffusion filter placed over the lens softens the image just slightly. Highlights bloom, edges relax. The world loses a fraction of its sharpness and gains a sense of memory. This is not degradation. It is intention, because noir was never about clarity. It was about feeling. A passing light flickers. A distant reflection trembles in a puddle. Smoke curls through a beam and disappears. Nothing holds still for long. Movement in noir is often small, but it is constant, and it matters. A coat shifts as the figure breathes. Water drips from a pipe above. Light pulses almost imperceptibly, as though the city itself is alive and unstable. These are not distractions. They're signals that this world exists beyond the frame. The figure steps forward. His reflection meets him in the water below. For a moment, there are two of him, one in light, one broken by ripple and shadow. And then the image settles, not static, but complete. This is the transformation, not from dark to light, but from empty to alive. Because in noir, the scene is never just a backdrop. It is a participant, a witness, sometimes even an accomplice. And when light, texture, and atmosphere come together, the result is no longer something you simply watch. It is something you step into. Shot list, Chapter 5. This chapter is sensory and immersive. Focus on subtle movement, reflections, and environmental interaction. 1. Wet down transformation. Before, dry pavement, flat matte. After, sprayed pavement, reflective. Close up, water droplets hitting ground. Reflection shot, light stretching across puddle. 2. Reflection imagery. Medium shot, Finch reflected in water. Distorted reflection as water ripples. Light shimmering across uneven surface. 3. Haze introduction. Clean air haze introduced gradually. Light beam appearing through haze. Side angle. Visible light rays cutting through space. 4. Depth and layering. Foreground object, pipe, fence, partially lit. Midground. Finch moving through frame. Background. Dim light or silhouette. 5. Texture interaction. Brick wall catching angled light. Metal surface reflecting highlights. Fabric absorbing light, coat detail. 6. Diffusion effect. Without filter, sharp, clinical image. With filter, soften highlights, bloom. Close up, light halo effect. 7. Environmental motion. Smoke drifting through beam. Water dripping from above. Subtle flicker in practical light. 8. Final atmospheric shot. Finch stepping through haze and reflection. Combined elements. Wet ground plus haze plus rim light. Slow push in as scene settles. Lighting breakdown. 1. Key light primary source. Hard LED, angled downward. Interacts with haze visible beams. Reflects off wet ground. 2. Haze/atmosphere. Light, even distribution. Purpose. Reveal light paths. Add depth and layering. 3. Wet ground reflection. Created via spray bottle. Position to catch key light. Effect. Doubles visual interest. Adds motion through subtle ripples. 4. Rim light. Very subtle. Enhances separation without overpowering. 5. Flags. Maintain shadow integrity. Prevent unwanted bounce from wet surfaces. 6. Lens diffusion. Applied in camera. Filter. Softens highlights and contrast edges. Camera strategy. Monitor reflections to avoid overexposure. Slight underexposure still maintained. Use focus creatively, sharp subject, softer environment. Let highlights bloom gently, not clip. Key principle of this chapter. A noir image is not built from light alone. It is built from what light touches. Clapperboard, end of Chapter 5. Shadows Reborn. Crafting film noir with modern light. Chapter 6. From digital precision to timeless mystery. Studio microphone narration script. At the beginning, there was only an alley. Flat, evenly lit, without tension, without question. A space that revealed everything, and in doing so, said very little. Now it is something else. The same walls, the same ground, the same narrow stretch of space, but transformed. Light no longer fills the scene. It moves through it. Shadows no longer sit quietly in the background. They define the frame. This is the final step, not in building the image, but in shaping how it is remembered. We turn now to the grade, not to correct, but to interpret. Modern cameras capture color with extraordinary accuracy, but noir does not live in color. It lives in tone, in contrast, in the delicate balance between highlight and shadow. So we begin by removing color entirely, not as a shortcut, but as a choice. The image shifts. What once relied on hue now depends on luminance. Faces, textures, reflections, all redefined by how much light they hold or refuse. But black and white alone is not enough. The danger is sterility. A digital monochrome image can feel too clean, too precise, too modern. So we begin to shape it further. Contrast is adjusted carefully, not crushed into oblivion, but guided. Highlights are allowed to bloom softly. Shadows are deepened, but not emptied. There must always be the suggestion of detail, even where the eye cannot fully see. Then grain, a texture once unavoidable, now deliberately restored. Film grain is not noise. It is movement. It is life within stillness. A subtle, ever-changing pattern that reminds the viewer, this image is not static. It breathes. Layered gently over the frame, the grain begins to break the perfection of the sensor. Edges soften, not physically, but perceptually. The image feels older, less certain, more human. We take one final look, before and after, the original alley. Bright, clear, unquestioning. And now, a world of contrast, of tension, of unanswered questions. The difference is not in the equipment, not in the location, not even in the light itself. It is in the intention. The figure stands once more beneath the street lamp. But now he belongs here, not as a subject placed into light, but as a part of the shadow itself. For a moment, his face is visible. Not fully, never fully, just enough to suggest thought, history, something unresolved. Then he steps back, and the darkness accepts him. This is the essence of noir. Not simply darkness, but the choice of darkness. In a world where we can illuminate everything, we choose not to, because mystery does not exist in what is shown. It exists in what is withheld. And perhaps that is why noir endures, not as a relic of the past, but as a reminder that sometimes the most powerful image is the one that trusts the viewer to step into the shadows. Shot list, Chapter 6. This chapter blends technical finishing plus emotional closure. 1. Before/after reveal. Split screen. Left, clean digital alley. Right, fully graded noir version. Slow crossfade between the two. 2. Black and white conversion. Color image gradual desaturation. Mid-transition, muted tones. Final, full monochrome. 3. Contrast shaping. Demonstration. Flat grayscale increasing contrast. Close-up, face gaining depth through tonal separation. 4. Grain application. Clean image grain introduced. Close-up, subtle movement of grain texture. Side-by-side comparison. 5. Final cinematic sequence. Finch under street lamp. Fully finished look. Slow push-in. Smoke drifting. Reflection beneath him. 6. Closing movement. Finch steps backward in a shadow. Light remains, but subject disappears. Frame holds for a beat after he's gone. 7. Final shot. Empty alley. Rain continues. Light flickers once, then steadies. Final image stack, all elements combined. Lighting, hard directional key, controlled spill, subtle rim separation. Shaping tools, gobas for pattern, flags for negative fill. Atmosphere, haze for light beams. Wet surfaces for reflectio. Lens and camera, slight diffusion, controlled exposure. Intentional contrast, post-processing, black and white conversion. Contrast sculpting, film grain overlay. Key principle of this chapter: noir is not created by tools. It is created by restraint. Clapperboard end of documentary.